Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Host Eddie Frederick.
Welcome to Caribbean Perspective. So glad you can join us. The story that dominates in today's edition for Monday, 7th April 2025, and brought to you in association with our friends at Antillean Group. Creative Alliance Ponzi scheme collapses as the citizens of the islands affected prove their thirst for promises of financial returns without much effort. Details after this important message.
Believe in our strength, we'll stand by you. Protection from all perils, big and small. Reassurance we give, it's so glad to see. Peace of mind, that's our service guarantee. We look after all our family. Yes, we do at every opportunity.
Antillean Group, underwriters of all classes of insurance solutions for your protection and investment. Live well financially.
Welcome back. Creative Alliance, a fraudulent investment scheme posing as a video platform, collapsed on April 2nd after operating as a Ponzi scam that lured thousands of St. Lucians and other regional nationals with fake returns and racist insults from operators. The elaborate con, which mirrored previous scams like MetaMax, vanished after collecting millions, leaving victims financially devastated after encouraging them to take loans for bogus high-yield packages. Chloe Dantes of MBS Prime St. Lucia has details.
April 2nd may soon be remembered as the new April Fool's Day, as thousands of St. Lucians woke up to the harsh reality that they had fallen victim to one of the biggest Ponzi schemes in the island's history. Earlier last week, hopeful investors had been reassured that their payouts were just a few days away, with many eagerly awaiting April 2nd as the promised payday. However, this morning, it became clear that Creative Alliance, the company at the center of it all, was nothing more than a scam. A video content platform promising massive investment returns has been exposed as an elaborate Ponzi scheme, leaving thousands of St. Lucians in financial ruin. Operating under the name Creative Alliance, the company masqueraded as a legitimate business, complete with flashy outdoor ads and even physical offices. But in reality, it was a scam nearly identical to the MetaMax fraud, which collapsed last July after stealing over $200 million. CA first appeared in St. Lucia back in 2024, initially paying out small returns to gain trust. By 2025, it had amassed 12 WhatsApp groups, each packed with 1,500 members, all lured by promises of easy money. The scheme escalated with investment packages ranging from $1,999 to $19,999 USDT, tempting many to take out loans in hopes of unrealistic profits.
I know all credit cards were taken away. I know she had no bank account.
Yeah, John, no. I in a mess, I up, I vex, I mad, I everything.
Last week, the app suddenly tripled payouts, a classic sign of a Ponzi scheme on the brink of collapse. Investors were told their withdrawals were delayed due to U.S. tax processing, but after 5 days of waiting, excuses turned to silence.
Check my bitch, and I'm getting angry. We need
On March 31st, victims were instructed to resubmit withdrawals requests and wait 1 to 72 hours. Instead, by April 2nd, they woke up to being kicked out of all CA apps except one. Unanswered messages left on one tick in WhatsApp and shocking racial abuse from CA managers who called St. Lucians slaves in leaked screenshots. Now, WhatsApp groups are flooded with angry voice notes and videos as victims realize their money is gone. The scheme's operators have vanished, leaving behind a trail of broken promises and financial devastation. This is a stark reminder. If an investment relies on recruiting others rather than real profits, it's a scam. Authorities must act, but for many, it's already too late. Chloe Dantes, NBC Prime.
In other news, the tariff crisis facing the region is going through some of its most challenging times. With a region heavily reliant on imports, Chair of CARICOM Prime Minister of Barbados Mia Mottley says this forms part of the region's legacy of its colonial dependence.
We must re-engage urgently, directly, and at the highest possible level with our friends in the United States of America. There is an obvious truth which has to be confronted by both sides. That truth is that these small and micro states of the Caribbean do not in any way or in any sector enjoy a greater degree of financial benefit in the balance of trade than does the United States. In fact, it is because of our small size, our great vulnerability, our limited manufacturing capacity, our inability to distort trade in any way, that successive United States administrations, including and most recently the Reagan administration in the early 1980s, went to great lengths to assist us in promoting our abilities to sell in the United States under the Caribbean Basin Initiative. We will see how these tariffs will impact on that.
But she notes that heads of state and heads of government have been working to diversify away from that dependence. Prime Minister Mottley stresses that the Caribbean economies are not so large and have always been at the whims of global prices. She says CARICOM leaders can lower tariffs to zero, but it will not make a difference because the region's economies are small and vulnerable.
If Europe and China and the US and Canada and Mexico are all putting tariffs on each other, that is going to disrupt supply chains. That is going to raise the cost of producing everything from the food you eat to the clothes on your back, to the phone in your pocket, to the car you drive down the road, to the spare parts that you need for critical infrastructure. That means higher prices for all of us to pay. And sadly, yes, this will impact all of you, regardless of what any of our Caribbean governments will do.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick,
in association with our friends at
Antillian Group, underwriters of all classes of insurance solutions for your protection and investment. Live well financially.
Jamaican business leaders are sounding off following the U.S. government's announcements of a 10% reciprocal tariff on local exports. Economist Keenan Falconer was among the first to outline the potential short and long-term implications of the policy shift on Jamaica's economy. Joel Kraskill of CVM's Business Report provides details.
Based on reactions from the business community in Jamaica to the U.S. government's announcement of a 10% reciprocal tariff regime on local exports to the largest economy in the world. Jamaica currently exports approximately $1 billion in goods to the U.S., while imports total approximately $3 billion. Economist Keenan Faulkner was among the first to weigh in on the potential immediate impact of the measures.
When we talk about reciprocal tariffs, what the American administration has done is to sort of aggregate both tariff and non-tariff barriers, and they said that they have now added that together and divided by half. So those countries that have especially more punitive tariffs on the US will now get more punitive tariffs in response, whereas Jamaica and other countries that did not have any tariffs get a baseline of 10%.
In fact, the details and structure of the tariffs are not yet totally clear, as shared by Senator Albin Hill, Minister of Investment, Industry and Commerce.
We don't even know the details yet of all the tariffs. The Foreign Ministry and Minister Kamina Johnson-Smith, they're getting all the details, working with the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce. But even while we get those, we know that we are resilient people. We know that in the past 10 years, we have learned how to manage an economy. And yes, we're going to take on these challenges because Jamaica is going to have to succeed, whether we have exogenous shocks like the pandemic, like the weather shocks from hurricane, or shocks from tariff.
Mitri Siaga, president of the private sector organization of Jamaica PSOJ, spoke in relative terms about the opportunities that may emerge.
You know, it's new for us because we had the CBI, which gave us zero duties. Now we're 10%. But the truth is, other countries like China are up to close to 50%. So we still have a 40% quote-unquote advantage. So I'm going to choose to look at this as an opportunity, as an advantage, as a way to say, listen, Jamaican companies have a better deal than everybody else in the world, or at least as good a deal as anyone else in the world. Let's use it.
A consideration that is also being weighed by Sidney Thwaites, president of the Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association, who suggested to JMEA membership that the island, located around 600 miles from Florida and whose total TEU capacity continues to increase, may also consider nearshoring as an option.
As potentially we're able to serve as a nearshore option that is more advantage to some of the other countries that had a higher tariff imposed on them. So we're telling our members to really look out and seek, a lot of input from, the supply chains, customers, etc., and others who are in the space. And while we're doing that, keep a lookout and keep agile for any opportunities that could come our way as a result of this.
I have heard that being mentioned, and the fact that relatively the Jamaican jurisdiction has less tariffs compared to elsewhere. Maybe persons might shift their activities here, but there are other reasons why that wouldn't have happened in the past, because remember, we would not have had been subject to US tariffs before. So persons could have done it before, but there were other structural issues, business-related, investment-related, that would have prevented that. So if you can now fix those issues and start to accelerate progress in that area where now is, I believe, the most opportune time to think about it, then that would, augur well for our economic prospects.
However, it's not only manufacturing and exports that may potentially be impacted, as Executive Chairman of Sandals Resorts Adam Stewart, whose internationally renowned hotel chain attracts huge numbers of visitors from the United States, as well as other markets impacted by the new tariff regime, shared his considered perspective.
I think indirectly everyone will be infected. Once the U.S. economy, which is the largest economy in the world, and a dear friend to Jamaica and the Caribbean, if there's any instability and confidence which will be reflected in the stock market, then it's fair to say that it could have a disruption for the visitors that may choose to come here. People tend to be, in times of insecurity, they may pull in their horns a little bit. They may wait another month or two. A lot of leisure and travel to Jamaica on the leisure side, on the resort side, is a luxury, not a necessity for life. So, but if out of it the U.S. economy thrives, it makes America more powerful. It might be a short-term gap to something more successful that's to come. So, at this stage, I don't think it's having a material impact. It's definitely, you can feel it a little bit that people are a bit nervous. But we'll see where it lands. In the meantime, those of us in opposition will continue to push hard to promote and to remind the world that Jamaica has never been better to travel to.
Antigua and Barbuda's Prime Minister Gaston Brown is warning that unsubstantiated claims being made by his political rivals about the Alpha Nero sale could harm the country's reputation and even its banking sector. Prime Minister Brown will also table all documents relating to the sale of the super yacht at Parliament's next sitting, as the government insists it has nothing to hide. An additional trove of documents was released to the media earlier last week, including the absolute bill of sale for the vessel. ABS's Garfield Burford reports.
This one now has gone beyond the shores of Antigua and Barbuda and could sully the reputation of our country.
Prime Minister Honorable Gaston Brown speaking with ABS News about claims being made about the sale of the Alpha Nero super yacht and the use of the funds. Certain claims are made in a fresh filing in a U.S. federal court by Russian citizen Yulia Gurrieva-Motlakov. The Prime Minister insists members of the main opposition United Progressive Party are in cahoots with Gurrieva-Motlakov in this matter. In addition to insisting everything has been above board in the vessel's sale, the head of government cautions that the allegations being made place the country's reputation and correspondent banking relations at risk.
You may want to undermine the Prime Minister and his family with the hope they can get political power, but at what cost? What if, for example, there was a knee-jerk reaction by different stakeholders, including the corresponding banks and so on, and they de-risk us? It's one thing for us to say mean things about each other in the domestic space, but when they're collaborating with foreign entities to undermine the image of the country. I think that is a very dangerous position, and the opposition will be best advised to cease and desist from that type of behavior.
He wants those peddling the claims of graft to act responsibly.
I can understand the desperation that is taking place, but can't allow desperation to push you to the extent that you're willing to destroy your country in order to seek power, to attain power.
A filing in a U.S. federal court is requesting discovery from U.S. financial institutions. However, the government says it has bared its books in this matter and has nothing to hide. It says no credible evidence has been presented to prove any wrongdoing by any government official. The records released by the government show the vessel was sold for $40 million in July last year.
I am Eddie Frederick. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean. In the meantime, please follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel for daily regional news and more, in association with our friends at Antillian Group.
Believe in our strength, we'll stand by you. Protection from all perils, big and small. Reassurance we give, it's so clear to see. Peace of mind, that's our service guarantee. We look after all our family. Yes, we do at every opportunity.
Antillian Group, underwriters of all classes of insurance solutions for your protection and investment. Live well financially.